presentation titled, What's the Reality of Virtual Conferences? Good afternoon, or whichever time zone your physical body resides in. I'm going to start this session by asking a few questions about you before we share some thoughts with each other. So we're going to start, first of all, with asking who here has attended or presented at a physical world, we sometimes call that RL conference, of any kind. I'd like you to please type attended, presented, both, or neither into chat. And I'm not going to bother to read these. It looks like our people here are very active, both attending and presenting in the physical world. And I want to thank you for your responses. Who in the audience has attended or presented at a virtual world conference prior to this one? And again, you can please type attended, presented, both, or neither. Boy, lots of good active folks in this audience. This is great. Okay, thanks for that. And another question. Who here has organized or been part of a team that organized physical or virtual conferences? So please type physical, virtual, both, or neither into the chat for that one. Some people are unilateral on this one. Interesting. From your responses, I can tell that you're all going to be really helpful to me as I think more about this topic after today's session ends. And you'll have several chances throughout the session to share your ideas in text. So I'm going to start with a little background. Our organization, as do a number of others in virtual worlds, holds virtual conferences frequently. Virtual Ability Inc. organizes and hosts 2 professional international conferences each year. One is the International Disability Rights Affirmation Conference, IDRAC, that's held every fall. And I'll post several links. This is the first of many. This is the archives of IDRAC. Our other conference is our annual Mental Health Symposium. That one is in the spring. And there are the archives for the previous mental health symposiums. Our next Mental Health Symposium is this month. It's scheduled for Friday, April 26th. There's a note card in the giver box that I'm hoping iSky will set out for me. Maybe I can get that to do it. I'll try. I don't know if it'll stay. Grab it quick. It may not stay. You can also check out the schedule for the upcoming conference at that link. We also put on smaller conferences for some of our research partners. When we support virtual world researchers, we encourage them to present their findings back to the virtual world community in the virtual world. We've also given physical world conferences at which we have an SL conference in attendance. A few years ago, we did one in Denver, Colorado live, but we had half our audience in Second Life. And the fun began when the 2 audiences interacted. So how does virtual world conference organization and preparation compare to physical world conferences? In many ways, they are the same, since a lot of that depends on the size and nature of the conference. What are some ways that you can think of that physical world and virtual world conferences are the same? Please do some typing and put that in chat so that we can see it, and I'll give you some hints. They both have presenters. They both have audiences whose needs have to be considered, scheduling and schmoozing. They both are in a place and they both run on a schedule. Networking opportunities, tech support. What else? Technical problems. Oh, JJ, you had to mention that. Caliber, accessibility. I'm not an expert on this topic, but I do have many years of experiences to draw on. I'm going to speak from the perspective of our Virtual Ability annual conferences in describing a virtual world conference. And I'm going to lay out the steps of the overall conference process and talk about that. Probably the first thing you want to do is decide on a theme. What we do is we cull through topics of papers I've been reading and keeping in a folder throughout the year. Then we brainstorm an overarching theme for the upcoming conference that will allow us to invite many of the authors. Then we sort of decide on a conference format. For instance, our conferences do use talking head presentations, but we also have done a variety of other formats like paired or group talking heads, panel discussions, interviews, structured or unstructured, focus groups, art performances, literature readings, poster sessions, field trips and tours, showing a video and discussing it. You have to be open to however the presenters feel most comfortable. This is really important to create a conference staff team. I'm going to list some of the responsibilities for the team: planning and setup, administration, and that should also be the point of contact both for the presenters and the attendees. Record keeping, this requires a detailed personality that is so not me, and I want to thank MOOC for this. Promotion, on-site volunteers for the dates of the conference. That's probably going to be the largest team. These responsibilities may be shared by just a few individuals, but it's wise to have an adequate team support. No matter how small your conference, you cannot do it all by yourself. Now, one set of volunteers that we use at Virtual Abilities conferences may be unique. We ask different community members to introduce each session and the presenter. And this does several things. It raises the profile of the conference within our community, and it provides one-time volunteer opportunities that help newer community members feel more connected to our work. It provides the presenter with another person to relate to when the rest of the conference staff are likely busy with other tasks. It shows the capabilities of persons with disabilities to the non-disabled members of our audience and to the presenter. And often it's a bit of a challenge for the introducer, who feels a great sense of accomplishment afterwards. Many of our introducers bring along their Second Life family and friends to their sessions as support. So this further expands the audience. Yes, you did, Beth. So this is a win all around. Fourth, we invite, or you could choose your presenters. They choose them here at VWBPE. We invite people to become presenters. We do not put out a call for proposals. This means, sorry about that, we don't go through a process of reading proposals and choosing the ones we think will be worthwhile. Instead, we choose invitees from the papers I've been reading in the past year, and I admit I'm a geek. And then we make a huge list of all the ones that we think would be good. Yeah, and they don't quit calling, do they? If the chosen presenters are not familiar with virtual worlds, we need to give them a vision of what presenting here is like, and we need to offer to train them. Initially, we share a short video made in World that depicts a presentation. And of course, once they've accepted, then you need to support them as they learn how to use the presentation tools and how to operate their avatar. Most speakers who are coming in brand new to Second Life do not need to master all the Second Life skills. We do not take speakers through our community gateway orientation. That would be overkill unless they plan to continue in Second Life. And if they do, we can take them through the whole orientation later on. What you want to do is figure out the bare minimum skill set that a presenter needs and stick with that in your instructions to them. Then you want to create your agenda, and the challenge here is scheduling people from across all the globe's time zones. We start out by asking the presenters what times they are available in their local time zone on the date of the conference. Our Europeans typically are available early in the conference SL day, and our Asians are available later in the conference day, which is sometimes early the following day, their local time. We always post the conference times in SLT Pacific, and we remind the presenters that they will need to translate what they see on the website to their own time zone. And we have to double and triple check the time zone differences. And this is a site that we've found really helpful for time zone conversion. You're going to want to promote the conference. Methods for promotion depend on whether your audience is drawn from people who are already in World, from people who are not yet involved in Second Life, or from both. Yes, Joanne, are you from Singapore? We put the conference information on our website. We point to it on our blog, Facebook, and Twitter. Oh, for Pete's sake. We know that the advertising of events in Second Life is notoriously flawed. However, you really should use as much of it as you have access to. So you want to put each session on the online Second Life calendar and include the conference website in the description so that they can look for more things. You want to ask Linden Lab to put the conference on its splash page so everyone signing into Second Life sees it. And Patch talked about that in the previous session. You want to create a note card of individual announcements for each session and post that in applicable groups chat about 10 minutes before the presentation. Have it written out ahead of time. You want to put the conference information and a link to the conference website in the pics section of your profile. You're welcome to look at my profile, and you can see the pic that I have for the Mental Health Symposium there. The next thing you want to do is individual walkthroughs with presenters and volunteer staff. We created an Ed Memoir, a short document that steps presenters through everything they need to do between when they sign into Second Life, through doing a voice check, running the slides and the teleprompter tools, interaction with the transcriptionists, all the way to disconnecting from the slides and signing out. We do at least one full conference day walkthrough with each introducer because they can be as nervous as the presenters. Teams like our greeters are the responsibility of the team leader, who explains the expectations to the team members and answers their "how do I handle this situation?" questions. You're going to want to prepare for emergencies. In a large physical world conference, you really don't need to fill the time if a presenter can't present for some reason. But here, it's useful to have a fill-in presentation available. In our case, in the past, this has meant taking the audience on a tour of related Second Life sites. One time I offered a mini presentation on how to read research papers. And sometimes we twist the arms of a few of our community members to get them to do a panel discussion. So you can be creative, but you've got to be prepared. Now, during the conference, generally, once the thing gets in motion, life gets simpler for the conference staff. Things either work out or they don't, and there's really not much you can do about that. We've had griefers at our conferences, not too many. We've had sim crashes, again, not too many. We've had presenters who could not get voice to work no matter what we tried. We've had presenters show up at the wrong time. Most of them were early, which isn't that terrible, I guess. And we've had some presenters who didn't show up at all. You know, things happen. You have to take all of that in stride, and we found that most of our SL audiences are pretty chill. And then it's all over, and while you don't need to tear down the tables or stack the chairs or sweep the floor, there is follow-up even after a virtual conference. Be sure you have GDPR releases before you post anything from the presentations. GDPR stands for General Data Protection Regulations, and these become effective in the EU last year. If you're not familiar with those 4 letters and what they mean, you're going to want to bookmark that site right there. And I also found a really good blog entry that explains how GDPR requirements relate to both physical and virtual conferences. So you're going to want to mark that one too. We send a certificate of appreciation, which is either an in-world plaque, an object, or an emailed PDF to thank all of the conference team members. And we also send a certificate to every one of our presenters. Many of them tell us that they have a copy of that in their personnel file. You want to collect and analyze feedback. You're going to look at attendance figures and evaluation responses. Oh, do you, Lori Vaughn? Now, I was concerned about inadequate marketing. I always am. And so I am anyone that I don't know in the audience to ask how they heard about the conference. My notes show that it's a scatter of all of the ways that we've advertised. There is not one preferred method. Now, negative feedback can be extremely helpful. Just a few days ago, we got some pretty frustrated responses from a presenter who was receiving his initial training on the presentation tools. iSky listened really carefully. She modified the tools, and she created a helpful image to add to our Ed Memoir. Now I'd like to hear your thoughts on how we can convince other people to attempt virtual conferences. So let's make a list of advantages compared to physical world conferences. And let's start with conference organizers. Please type into chat some advantages you can think of for conference organizers to convince them to hold their conference in a virtual world. And I'd say with Lori Vaughn that a huge advantage to the organizer is the lower cost and effort to set up. Tori is agreeing, Lynn is agreeing. You don't need to travel to the city to preview the venue the year before. You don't need to commit to a contract for catering when you can only guess about the attendance numbers. Nahi, what does no packing mean? Oh, no packing to travel. Yeah, your baggage is the web. Good, very good. Thank you for those thoughts. Now, what about, yes, Svea is saying that he does a picture as a presentation for the presenter, and that's really good. What about for presenters? What kind of advantages can we tell the presenters to get them to come in? And we do that at our conference too, Svea. We often tell potential presenters that they will save on travel cost, time, and bother. No lugging equipment, right, Thunder? And also that they can present from the comfort of their home computer. They can be wearing their pajamas, and JJ says you can wear your bunny slippers. That's right. See, Zinnia's still in her pajamas. Lori Vaughn's not admitting. We've had some really nice thank yous from our presenters. One of them said, I have a lot to think about. I'm taking away food for thought about what we, being the presenters, can learn from virtual environments. Yeah, Thunder, that's a good thing. You don't have to see the audience. Another one of our presenters is going to take information about how easy virtual conferences are to an organization that she is responsible for. A couple of our former presenters have continued in Second Life as researchers with funded projects. I agree, Zinnia. It's a welcoming place for people with nerves. Now, this is a story that I love to tell. One of our presenters at a previous conference is a college professor who is on the autism spectrum. As part of her accommodation, she travels to conferences with an attendant. She told us happily that this was the first session she'd ever done where she did it entirely on her own. She did not need the assistance of an attendant, and that really made me smile. Finally, let me ask you, what about the advantages for the audience? What can you tell to convince people to come in and be in the audience of a virtual conference? How do we convince them? Cost saving again for the attendees. Travel, money, and convenience. A lot of these are the same, aren't they? Yeah, that's what Lori Vaughn says. Zeppelin, we can talk later. Live stream, multi-device, flexibility in schedule, broad array of presenters. Thank you again for your responses. We've had numerous attendees tell us that they would never have gotten to hear this information from these professionals. You don't have to worry about your wardrobe. Attendees have said they could not have imagined that they would be allowed to or capable of coming to a professional conference. We have a lot of lay people at our conferences. Professional development at your fingertips. That's a nice way to say that night. It's always really special to us when one of our presenters thanks the audience for their valuable input, and that has happened several times. We have had presenters tell us that the audience has made a difference to their research. Now I want us to think about how a virtual world conference could be improved. I'm open to any suggestions you may have about organizing, advertising, or running a virtual conference. I'm going to provide my contact information for you to do that, to give me those suggestions, and that'll be on the last slide. What I want to talk about now specifically is the problem of predatory conferences. And maybe you don't know what a predatory conference is. The University World News explains it like this, and I'm going to quote, "To be classified as predatory, the conference organizer needs to meet 3 criteria." And Zeppelin, you're on the right track. The organizer holds low-quality academic meetings for the primary aim of making money, not supporting scholarship. There is no effective peer review allowing anyone to purchase a speaking slot. And the organizer employs deceit, the most common forms being false claims of peer review, hiding the company headquarters' true location, and concealing the for-profit nature of the company, unquote. That's really horrible. If you want to learn more about predatory conferences, there's the article that came from. I'm sorry to tell you, it's true, Thunder. How do you tell if a conference you're being invited to present at is a predatory one? You should check Beale's list of predatory journals and publishers to see if the conference sponsor is a predatory journal or a predatory publisher. And then Caltech puts out this other list of predatory conferences that you'll want to check. VWBPE is not on the list. I'm glad to say that academics are becoming more aware of the sinister nature of these scams. Unfortunately, that can backfire on legitimate conferences that are simply unfamiliar to the average college professor, and that is a lot of those that are held in virtual worlds. Virtual Ability often sends out over 100 invitations to speak and may receive less than 5 responses, and some of those are no thanks. I had thought the problem was getting worse this year. Then I received an email, and I'm sure it was not intended for me. It was from a European graduate student addressed to his professor, and he was laughing at this funny email he had received from a predatory conference. While I was sincerely glad to see that the student was being careful, I was horrified that he felt our little Virtual Ability conference was predatory. There's no cost to either presenters or audience for our conferences. We don't solicit sponsorships. We are open about the purposes of our conferences and the fact that our audience includes the general public, many of them with disabilities. I'm going to have to think hard about how to present our conferences to an unsuspecting recipient of our invitation to present so that he or she does not assume we are being predatory. Have any of you who have been conference organizers in the audience had an experience of being mistaken for a predatory conference? And I really hope you haven't. It was a shock. And I think some of these are, like the Mayo Clinic is really well known. Right. If you're well known, I think it's less likely. I hope we can find a way to show that virtual world conferences are as legitimate as ones in the physical world. Equity. That's a common value in the disability community. And we strive for equity of gender and country of origin among our presenters. Although we try to invite equal numbers of male and female presenters, so far our tally is 66 male and 92 female presenters. Yes, Lear. I really can't explain that disparity, that gender disparity, but I do note that it is not always easy to tell gender from a person's name. For example, Jan could be either a male or a female name in English-speaking countries, so we may have invited accidentally more females. Yes, Lynn, thank you. Of course, the U.S. is the country we've had the most presenters from. Ooh, Lear. I want you to look at this list of countries of origin for our international presenters. From Europe, we've had Belgium, Denmark, Finland, Germany, Greece, Italy, the Netherlands, Northern Ireland, Norway, Portugal, Scotland, and the UK, quite a few from the UK. In Africa, we've had presenters from Egypt, Ghana, Mauritius, Nigeria, and several from South Africa. From Oceania, we've had quite a few from Australia and one from New Zealand. In South America, we've had a presenter from Brazil and one from Ecuador. In Asia, from Hong Kong, India, Saudi Arabia, South Korea. And in North America, we've had several from Canada and one from Costa Rica. We admittedly don't have as much luck recruiting Asians or South Americans as I would like. Oh, good idea, Joanne. For one thing, they are less likely than academicians from other countries to include their email contact in published papers. High Sky is mentioning technical challenges with presenters from several countries. I suspect from South America and from Asia there are language and cultural factors involved as well. We do also try to include practitioners, including Second Life practitioners, where we can, in addition to academicians. And this is intended to broaden the overall message of the conference by providing yet more perspectives on the conference topic. Our concern about accessibility are usually more about the audience than about the presenters, although we have worked with a recent presenter who is totally blind and he uses assistive technology to access his computer. He was so excited to be able to present in a virtual world that he has made several professional contacts through the Second Life people that he's met, and he's considering moving the lectures that he gives to a virtual format. Two sorts of accessibility are necessary at virtual world conferences, or physical world conferences. Yes, I remember, Nahi. You can talk about accessibility of the presentations themselves or accessibility of the venue. Most presenters, like I'm doing today, use PowerPoint slides as one modality for presenting material. Have you ever heard of death by PowerPoint, like text-heavy slides like the one in the picture? Here are some excellent suggestions for making a presentation accessible. I'm going to give you a really good link. That's Faculty News at SIUE. Presenting through various modalities, which is visually and in both voice and text, allows maximum communication. Yes, Lynn, we need that before every presentation. Yes, Mook, Dr. 84 slides. I'm pleased that large conferences such as VWBPE now insist on the accessibility of all presentations. This feature does not just benefit people with a disability. The text that is offered not only assists those who are deaf or hard of hearing, but is also useful to people whose first language isn't English because it's easier to translate text than speech. And it benefits those who are distracted. They could be distracted by a disability like ADD, or they could be distracted by a life event like a telephone call or a baby that needed a diaper change. The text transcript provides a handy archive of the conference, cheaper than getting a video created, and it serves as a tech backup if the presenter is unable to get in-world voice to cooperate for whatever reason. Now, I found this review of accessibility of presentations, including the delivery and the follow-up of the presentation. I thought you might want to mark that. Accessibility of the venue is equally important. I believe physical world conference organizers are becoming more aware of the necessity of obtaining an accessible venue. Those of us holding conferences in virtual venues need to be doing this as well. Hopefully not, Day. What accessibility features do you see in this snapshot of a presentation at our Sojourner Auditorium on Virtual Ability Island? And Svea, that is the Mayo conference that we had at our presentation. What accessibility features do you see in there? Space for all kinds of avatars? From tiny to giant? Ramps, open wheelchair areas? Clear path? Thank you. You're going to find a landmark to our auditorium in the disappearing giver box, along with the note cards. You can click on that box real quickly before it disappears. Several of the features that Emmy built into our auditorium way back in 2007 model best practices in physical world structural accessibility. There are no stairs. Every level of the auditorium is accessible by ramps. The various levels of seating allow those in the back a straight line of sight to the presenter and slides. But we did add some improvements over the physical world. I'm a wheelchair user, and often when we go into an auditorium, we're all of us seated together in the back corner, far away from our friends that we came with who can walk to a seat. In our auditorium, there's space for a person in a wheelchair to sit next to regular seating on every level of seating. And to facilitate that, the space in between the rows of seats is wide enough for a wheelchair to navigate. In this overhead snapshot of the auditorium, you can view several structural features that enhance accessibility. It looks very open. There's lots of windows, there's no roof, and that can help people with claustrophobia. The color scheme is green and blue and beige, and that's a very calm color scheme. One feature that you are unlikely to see in a physical world auditorium is the speaker platform on an island in a little lake that's fed by a waterfall, maybe in Las Vegas. If you look closely at the movement of the water when you're in the auditorium, you will also see that it is slower than normal SL water. And these water features are meant to be calming. Conference staff members are one visible accessibility feature. Seated right in front of the speaker's platform are two very important people. They're the transcriptionists, and I bless them and their magic fingers. Our transcriptionists don't have court reporter machines. They get to type really fast to put the gist of the speaker's remarks into chat so that deaf people can follow along in almost real time. As they do here at VWBPE, Virtual Ability uses transcriptionists along with teleprompter tools and the voice-to-text capabilities that are built into all modern computers to ensure that presentations are offered in what we call voice plus text. Looking at the pictures, standing in the aisles and at the entrances are our greeters. These people are also accessibility features. They can help anyone who has trouble seeing the slides or hearing the speaker. They also help people who don't understand proper behavior at professional meetings. And they support people who use assistive technology. Now, you can't see this structural feature because it's invisible to everybody except it's only visible to our blind audience members. Each seat cushion in the auditorium is individually numbered. The greeters can explain which nearby seat is unoccupied to a blind person, and that blind person can then find it listed in their viewer and sit there. Should every venue have at least a few individually named seats reserved for blind people? Again, this is not just used by those who are blind or visually impaired. Sighted people sometimes use a text-only viewer if they're on a low-end computer or are in an environment where visuals are not appropriate. I'm looking at you people who are doing this at work. So here are a few resources about accessibility in virtual worlds and virtual reality environments. Able Gamers is a great organization. You want to look around their website. I really like his point number 7 about having people with different kinds of capabilities user tester during development. And then there's another post. Yeah. And here's an article. And another post. And here's an accessibility tip for virtual conference organizers that benefits everybody. Ask Linden Lab to provide extra support for the SIM during the conference period. This has been really helpful to us, especially when we've had well-known speakers like Tom Belsdorf or Philip Linden. They draw large crowds, and the support for the SIM was really helpful. In summary, I'm encouraging everybody here to participate in and perhaps even to organize virtual world conferences. If you're new to virtual conferences, try attending a few on different topics to get a broader understanding of what a virtual world conference can accomplish. You're going to find a note card in the giver box that has vanished again. Let me try that one more time. I suppose I have the wrong group tag. And that conference, the Mental Health Symposium, will be on Friday, April 26th. There's my contact information. Please give me feedback on this presentation as well as any ideas you have that we all can learn from about making virtual conferences even more useful for our audiences. I want to thank you for your attention and comments.